Major League Baseball has announced a new venue for its All-Star Game after its decision to ditch the state of Georgia over new voting laws there, new voting law SB 202. The annual event will now be held at Coors Field in Denver, Colorado. So you think Colorado has got to have much less restrictive voting laws than Georgia, right? Nope. Ironically, the state Major League Baseball chose to teach Georgia a lesson about voting restrictions has rules that are just as restrictive as Georgia's, if not more so. That's right, you can't make this stuff up, but we got more on it for you. The details in the Buck Brief. Jim Crow on steroids is what Joe Biden called SB 202, the new law in Georgia that says things like if you're going to have voter ID for in-person voting, you should probably have it for people that are voting absentee, and you probably shouldn't just send out ballots to anyone as though they're not, even if they haven't asked to be absentee voters, because you have live ballots that are floating around now. These are some very basic ideas here. Joe Biden, the President of the United States, said that it was Jim Crow on steroids. So he's telling you that it's worse than the history of legal racism that went on after the Civil War, particularly in the American South, not entirely and only in the American South, but particularly in the American South, that involved segregated schools and water fountains and all kinds of the most evil and racist laws in our country's history. This law in Georgia, Joe Biden says, is worse than that. So if you want to know what a dishonest moron Joe Biden is, he's already proven that to you beyond any reasonable doubt. But now you have all these woke corporations that have weighed in on this as well, and they've put a lot of pressure on Georgia to do something about this. Georgia, of course, is... Now, when I say Georgia, we're talking about Republicans in Georgia. This is not a both sides issue. And they're punishing the state. It's going to cost about $100 million of lost revenue for when Major League Baseball now has pulled the All-Star Game from Atlanta. Keep in mind, Atlanta is a majority black city in a state, it's the largest city in a state that just went for 2 Democrat senators and a Democrat for president in Joe Biden. So they're punishing the state of Georgia, and really they're trying to do this to show Republicans something, by punishing Atlanta and a state that just went for Democrat, moving it to Colorado. And as some people are pointing out now, that's interesting, because if what they're doing in Georgia is Jim Crow on steroids, what is the existing voting regime in Colorado like? Turns out it's a little bit more restrictive, or perhaps you could argue right on par with Georgia. So what exactly is the benefit here? Colorado has all voters who vote at the polls must provide identification. If you're voting by mail for the first time, you may also need to provide a photocopy of your identification when you return your mail-in ballot. So they have not just voter ID for voting in person, but also for first-time absentee voters providing a copy of your identification with the ballot, which is the kind of regulation, the kind of security measure, integrity measure for voting that now you have in the state of Georgia. So why is it evil in Georgia, but it's okay in Colorado? Major League Baseball obviously hasn't really thought this one through, but don't you see, it's about taking action. This is Saul Alinsky-style mobilization of the masses without any real concern for truth, honesty, decency, or what's really going on. It's about getting people to feel like they're a part of something so that they're moving for what your side tells them to move for, right? You mobilize, and then you have a mobilized group. Now they have a lot of virtue signaling they can engage in. Look at us. We pulled a baseball game. See, we got a victory here. We got the Major League Baseball game pulled from Georgia. It doesn't matter that it's just going to another state that has the same laws. And it doesn't matter how stupid this whole thing is, because there's nothing wrong with the laws in the state of Georgia. They're not unconstitutional. They are not racist. They're just making some very understandable, reasonable changes to existing laws in the state of Georgia, which is what states are supposed to be able to do. They're supposed to be able to make determinations about what kind of laws they want to have in an election, how they want their elections to function. But Democrats hate this idea. They hate it so much. And also, the one law that got so much attention, or the change, I should say, within the law in Georgia was they're not even going to bring water to people in line. That's what we were told. Not even going to bring water to people in line. It's not really true. We already dealt with that yesterday. Turns out you can bring water and food to people. It just has to be 150 feet, which is not that far. I don't think anyone's going to die of starvation or thirst because they couldn't walk 100 feet in Georgia. The state, obviously, not the country, okay? Things are going to be just fine here. That they can't walk 100 feet to get the food and the water, so something terrible is going to happen, or this is discriminatory in some way. Turns out they actually can get self-serve water under this law. Why are we even talking about this? Well, because Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden and the mainstream media, they made a huge deal of this. Colorado's water law, turns out campaign workers are allowed outside of polling places to offer water, snacks, and other items to voters who are waiting to vote. These comfort teams, however, may not campaign or wear any apparel or accessories bearing the name or image of a candidate, political party, or ballot measure if they operate within 100 feet of the polling place. So yes, campaign workers can just hand out food and drink to people if they want to. They can't electioneer. That's the whole reason for the Georgia law too. And they're saying that campaign workers can give people water. I have to check and see if food's allowed to, but they can give people water. And they can set up 150 feet from the polling place, which is not that far, and give whatever food and water they want. They just don't want people being harassed in line to vote for one candidate or another with inducements in hand. Here's a cookie, vote for my guy. Here's a cupcake, vote for my girl. Whatever it may be. Remember, Joe Biden, Jim Crow on steroids. Joe Biden is a deceitful moron. Senator Tim Scott pointed this out too. Georgia voter ID, 17 days of early voting. Colorado voter ID, and 15 days of early voting. So you get more early voting in Georgia. Atlanta's 51% black, Denver's 9.2% black. The MLB is moving the Major League Baseball All-Star Game out of Atlanta, which has more day of voting rights than Colorado. The wokes are at it again. Yeah, they don't care that they lied about this. They don't care that they were wrong and this is stupid. And even the president himself, Joe Biden, is standing right behind this, as Jen Psaki explains.
Is there a sense of regret that perhaps he tipped the scale with his rhetoric, even if he doesn't have a direct cause and effect?
Well, he was answering a direct question during an interview with ESPN about the opening day baseball, something not everybody, most people in the country appreciate and enjoy. And he was simply conveying that he would support that decision if that decision was made by Major League Baseball, just like he would support decisions made by private sector companies.
Stands behind it. Stands behind the reckless demagoguery he used here to get the Democrat base all fired up. So they moved from one state to another. The state they moved to for Major League Baseball, more restrictive. Oh, gee.